Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown!
Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another
it!
one! Another one!
Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Galloway finds Rob Finnessy, who fires the three, and he hit it!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Friday. Of course, I am coming to you from BB's Market, located here in Bloomington. Of course, part of the Endeavor Hospitality WOW Group. Make sure you go to the Endeavor Hospitality My WOW Network, sign up for their WOW Club, start earning WOW rewards today to great places like BB's, where you can come in, sit down, and eat. Bakery items, fresh, frozen meats, the best meats cuts around, seafood. They've got it all, man. Best in-made house products. They've got this smoked salmon dip. It's incredible. Also, Andy Moore Honda. Make sure you go to andymoorehonda.com for all the best deals on new and used vehicles. Welcome in, of course, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you on this Friday from the Golf Club Eagle Point Studios here at BB's. On the program today, Alec Lasley from the Hoosier.com will be joining us. We'll be talking about Indiana basketball, previewing their game tomorrow with Wisconsin. And, of course, another offer went out by Indiana basketball to a Kentucky guard. We'll talk about that. Indiana women's basketball with a gigantic win last night. Well, big win, not gigantic. Let's not get carried away. It's a big win. It's an important win. It's not gigantic because Indiana should have won the game. They're a great team, and they did. We'll talk about that and much more. We'll hear from, maybe we won't. I forgot we don't have John on the program today, but we're going to hear from Michael Lewis. Michael Lewis, the head coach at Ball State, former Hoosier, was able to catch up with Michael, and we'll see what's going on with him. Keegan Nickoson from the Hoosier.com will join us as well to get you caught up on all things Indiana football. All these recruits, they signed 2 transfers in 2 days, or 8 in 2 days, my bad. So lots to talk about there. Zach Osterman as well, as the Big Ten is looking for a new commissioner, as Kevin Warren is now the property of the Chicago Bears. Back to the NFL he goes, which I think, like I said, I think that's a great move for the NFL. For the Big Ten. And I hope that they are smart enough to bring back the gentleman I talked about yesterday, who was the commissioner of the ACC, who should have been the commissioner of the Big Ten. Hopefully they go that route. But plenty to talk about. Lots. Appreciate everybody joining us. Hit me up the Andy Moore Honda hotline already, early and often. Kevin, on from down in Jeffersonville, where it's where we started originally on the Big X there, 1450. Be a good place for us to be right now, Kevin. You ought to let them know that. Let's see. Fred, how are you doing, man? The Easton Assassin, he's always up and at it. Howie. It's Michael. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody jumping on here. So, yeah, I'm going to have a good show today. Looking for that, as always. Last night, great game for the Indiana women. I was at that game, and it was fun to watch. They jumped out to they gained control of that game early in the second quarter, maybe by the end of the first quarter. But, man, they could have really been up 16, and just there were so many turnovers in that game. I'll have to pull the stats back up to see the total turnovers. There were a lot. I'm thinking like double digits on both sides, if I remember correctly. But that ended up Indiana could have really been up 16, literally easily at one point, but they allowed Maryland to hang around and make a game out of this and stay close until the very end. But Indiana was able to pull out and get the win, a big top 10 win. I mean, that's huge in and of itself just because it's a top 10 win. I talked to Terry Morton about that earlier this week, about the importance of games like this. And as coaches do, they try not to put these in a different basket, and I understand you can't do that with your team. But the truth and the reality of the matter is these games are important. They are big because when you have a top 10 game, more people pay attention. it gets more eyes. And when you win a top 10 game, that gets more attention. It helps solidify the program with whether it's recruiting, whether it's national respect. Indiana is still one of those programs that's on the rise. They're not, while they are been solid for the last couple of years, they're not UConn, they're not Tennessee yet, but they're wanting to strive and stay in that direction. And winning games like this brings in great recruiting, which follows that as well. But pulling these stats up real quick. Oh my goodness, man, this makes it pull up the wrong one, but oh well. We'll get that. I'll get to that in a minute. Hit the wrong one. I hate when I do that. But great game for Sydney Parrish. I think she ended up with 18 points before fouling out. 18 points on 7 of 13 shooting. And you talk about, here's something that the Indiana women's team have, that a couple things. They have shooters that will shoot. And Sydney Parrish missed a three-pointer last night. Indiana got an offensive rebound. They kicked around. It comes right back to her. She fires it again, drains it. Big. They've got shooters that look for their shots, that look to shoot. They not only will they shoot, they look to shoot. Not only that, they have shooters that look to get to the rim, to score. That's the men's team doesn't have that in they have it in with Jalen Hicchifino, but the women's program has that all around the floor. They have 4 players. Any 4 players on the court at once are shooters, are looking to drive, looking to score, or feed the ball to McKenzie. And speaking of feeding, Grace Berger, while she had a great game all the way around, her shooting wasn't quite there, 3 of 9 on the night, but 11 points, 5 of 6 at the free throw line. More importantly, she had 8 assists and 4 rebounds. 4 assists in the first early part of the game to help Indiana get out to that, jump out to that good start. She was making some passes that I was like, wow, I didn't see that pass. I mean, the fact that she's able to be so smooth and fluid right now, just 2 games back, pretty amazing. And the ability that this team has to take her back and weld it right in, only bodes well for them. They're gonna have a good part of the season, but a lot of games left, and they'll have a lot more tough ones. As the Big Ten is always tough. They'll have to play Maryland again. They've got to play Iowa and other teams as well. So, but congratulations, big win for Terry Moore and the Indiana women's team on that top 10 matchup last night. So congratulations. Let's see. That. Happy Friday. Oh, is it Friday the 13th? Holy cow. Did not notice that. Well, my goodness. Snuck that one in on me. Thank you very much, Justin. We appreciate you. 5 lefts. How are you, sir? Yes, the women's team does have grit. They talked about that last night. But I'll tell you, what another thing I failed to list that the women's team has. They close out on 3-point shooters. They did not allow much room for Maryland to shoot. They went 6 of 18. They put up 18 3-point shots, but only hit 6 of them. I'll give Indiana's defense part credit for that because they didn't give up a lot of open threes. They were getting after them and trying to get, as we heard I heard Mike Whitson talk the other day. He wants the Indiana defenders to get out into the face on the perimeter and get their hand up in to the shooter to bring the ball back down. Fred hoping Zach can relieve his blood pressure. Well, we'll see. Can't guarantee that, brothers. Maybe Alec can. He'll have some good news on an offer that went out last night. Oh, yeah. How about this? Minnesota, that's thanks for bringing that back up. Minnesota knocks off Ohio State last night. Now, I will say there was a horrific call in that game. And again, this was a clean block called by an official who had the shooter between him and the defender when he called the foul, I believe. Again, why are you calling fouls you cannot see cleanly? There's no way you can see through another body. And it drives me insane when an official calls a foul through another body. I don't care who it is. Fans of teams that are not Indiana think that we're really biased towards Indiana on this show, which I take umbrage to and I dispute. I think we treat everybody the same. We cover Indiana more. But regardless of that, I think the officiating just sucks overall. But that was a classic example. It was a beautiful block, and that would have probably saved the game for Ohio State, and it ended up costing the game for Ohio State. So officiating is just terrible, and something has to be done about it. I mean, I don't understand. They want to use replay all the time. How about cleaning up just horrific calls? The NFL did a great job this year on a lot of replays. They're able to say, oh, that's not a foul or this, that, and they just move on. That's how it should be. And that call last night in that game was exactly one of those. The analyst said he called it out on Big Ten and whatnot. So, but that's going to happen. You can't put games in the hands of officials, especially against teams like Minnesota. Guess what, though? Bad news for Indiana. Minnesota's win pulls preseason Big Ten favorite Indiana into a last place tie in the Big Ten. I'll say that again. Indiana, preseason Big Ten favorite Indiana, is now in a last place tie in the Big Ten at 1-4. So you got that going for you, which is nice. Also going to talk about, there was a piece in the Star yesterday in which Robbie Hummel talked about, had been on a podcast, and let's see, talking about Indiana basketball. Who's in worse shape, Indiana or Kentucky? We're going to take a break. That's part of what we'll talk about with Alec when we come back, in addition to previewing Indiana against Wisconsin tomorrow in Bloomington at the Simon Scott Assembly Hall. Travis Perry receives a scholarship offer from Indiana as well. Back with that and more, coming to you from BB's Market here on this Friday.
Right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Losing my tank. Fizzle. Yabba dabba doo. Stop the starters out, man. 5 lifts, it does matter, but it does not matter to the extent of being in last place. They were playing poorly before that. The defense was horrible before that. There was complete inconsistency before that. And then since that, the other players have just decided to fall apart instead of step up. So excuse making, man, the excuses don't, sorry to disagree, but
All right, Jim, we go live at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Friday, brought to you by our good friends from Andy Moore Honda. Go to andymorehonda.com for the best in new and used vehicles, of course, as always. And to Endeavor Hospitality's Wow Club. Make sure you sign up for the Wow Club. Start earning Wow rewards today to great places like Southern Stone, where each Monday night at 7:05, you can find Inside Indiana basketball, men's and women's for that fact, with Don Fisher and Mike Whitson at 7:05. Prior to that, Terry Morin takes the dais. And they'll have plenty to talk about after this big win here last night, and plenty more coming up for them, hopefully. But waiting for Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com to join us. Plenty to talk about on the Indiana side, of course, previewing the Hoosiers taking on Wisconsin tomorrow at home in a game that every game's a must win for Indiana. But even home games, no longer, nothing at home is going to be a gimme, minus maybe, well, you would think minus maybe Minnesota, but who knows? Maybe not. We'll certainly get a chance to find out. Wisconsin taking on the Hoosiers tomorrow. That game's at 1 o'clock, by the way. That's on CBS. Currently, Wisconsin sits at 11-3. Indiana at 10-5. Oh, let's see. Where are they in the Big Ten Conference standing? Is that is there music from someone?
Hey, talking to me?
Are you talking to me? How you doing, brother? Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com joining us.
Good morning. Doing good. How are you doing?
I cannot complain. Lots to talk about. That's for certain. Here at BB's this morning. Too bad you can't join me. First off, I guess let's talk about Travis Perry. Indiana offers 6'2" guard, 4-star guard Travis Perry out of the 2024 class. He plays for Indiana Elite with Raleigh Burgess and Flory Badunga. This is a guy we've heard about, talked about over the course of the year, over the AAU season. This is like the sixth kid that Indiana's offered from the state of Kentucky, I think, which is, again, I just make note of because that's probably 5 more, maybe 4 more than they had offered just in the 20 years prior to that, maybe longer than that. But right, regardless, Travis Perry is a lot of Indiana flavor to him, playing with those Indiana kids, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one that I think a lot of people thought would happen maybe 4 or 5 months ago. He's been on Indiana's campus twice, came for an unofficial visit back in the very beginning of May, and then was actually back for Indiana's team camp in the summer as well. So he knows what Indiana basketball is about. He's experienced it, obviously to a lesser extent without, truly being there for a game day. But, one of the best scorers at the point guard position in the 2024 class. Decent size, 6'2", but can absolutely light it up from the outside. Had 45 points over the weekend against Reed Shepherd, Indiana target back in the day, who had received an offer but eventually signed with Kentucky in the 2023 class. Was 10 of 17 from 3. So this is a guy that I think a lot of people were really hoping Indiana would get involved with. Kind of has the same moxie that Braden Smith at Purdue now has, and Gabe Cupps has as well, but just a much better overall score when you look at that trio right there. But Kentucky offered him a few months ago, and I think Indiana was kind of waiting to see if he was going to jump on that offer right away before they truly got involved. Now it's been a couple months, and he still hasn't done anything with Kentucky. I think that was more of a in-state offer than truly, a lot of mutual, relationship there. I think there's still a long ways to go in this recruitment. So I think Indiana waiting to this point isn't going to hurt them. And we'll see what happens. I think Indiana will be a school that is at least involved in this one for the long haul.
Well, we've seen how quickly fortunes can turn when you don't have that firepower. Gabe Cupps coming on next year. Todd Leary talked about him, that Indiana is going to be very glad to have him because he's a playmaker and his great court vision. I haven't seen Travis Perry play, but being the number 19 point guard in his class, I'd say he sounds like he's playing pretty well at that position too.
Yeah, and again, very different style of play than Gabe Cupps. Gabe Cupps not going to be scoring 30, 40 points every single night. So far this season, Travis Perry's averaging 30 a game. Better shooter, shooting about 46, 47% from three this year as well. But just a very high volume scorer, really good all around point guard. But he is a very talented scorer of the basketball, whereas Gabe Cupps is more of that floor general, floor leader, and will get a lot of his teammates involved before looking for his own points. You need both to win, and I think Indiana continues to see that the inability that they have with this roster right now to have multiple true ball handlers on the floor and multiple guys who can get others involved is something that they're really struggling with, especially if you hit one or two injuries, which they obviously have, and a significant one to Xavier Johnson, your starting point guard. So, they continue to try to load up with backcourt offers, wing offers, and ball handlers. Obviously, we'll see what happens. Still a ways to go before, that 2024 class is really built out. But Indiana saw the priority and sees the emphasis now, especially after the last few games. And I think this was a smart offer for them to now fully get involved in this recruitment.
As the season has played out, and guys like him can see that Indiana is in need of people like him, and that even when you don't seem to be in need, those fortunes can turn on a dime. The injuries with Xavier and Ray Thompson didn't impact that position, but it doesn't matter. They can happen at any time. There's a myriad of reasons why there's always going to be opportunities, and one would think that if you earn the minutes, or you have the opportunity to earn those minutes, and you can do so from being a freshman on up. And I've seen CJ Gunn get more minutes than we're accustomed to seeing most freshmen get. Jalen Hachifino aside, but I think that they look at that and say, hey man, I got a shot to go there and play.
Yeah, and you would expect those minutes for some of these freshmen and, hopefully some of these sophomores to continue to be on the uptick, especially with kind of how the last month of the season's really gone with the, kind of lack of effort, lack of energy with some of the other guys on the floor. But again, if you're a talented player in high school and you're a guy that Indiana wants on your roster, especially the type of maturity mentally that Indiana has targeted here in the high school classes with obviously the 2022 class, 2023 class, and now moving forward. They want guys who are obviously not going to shy away from any sort of competition. And I think you've seen that with especially a guy like Jalen Hachifino, but even moving into some of these future classes and some of the guys that they are truly targeting, regardless of if they see minutes right away, guy like CJ Gunn really, kind of was an afterthought. I think and I don't say that to berate him or anything like that, but obviously when you look at this entire freshman class, probably was the last guy that you thought would really see significant minutes this year. And what does he do when he gets on the floor? He does the one or two things that a lot of these other players are not doing, and that's play with energy, play with toughness. He's going to make mistakes, right? He's a freshman, and you'd rather make those mistakes going full speed than make some of these mental mistakes that a lot of the upperclassmen are doing right now, because you can slow a guy down. That's one of the easier things to do, but it's not always easy to get someone to speed up and play out of their pace, and you'd rather have it that way than the other.
Yeah, and CJ's one of those guys that he knows that Mike Woodson has said it throughout the season. You have to make the most with the minutes you're given, because we've seen, whether it's Logan Duncombe, Caleb Banks, whomever, minutes are not just handed out for whatever reason, and we may not understand why certain players are playing 29 minutes and bringing nothing to the floor, while there's opportunities to give experience to guys who probably could use it. But that's a whole nother question. Anything else going on the recruiting side of things?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we talked a little bit about it last week, but the biggest development over the last week and a half has been the Texas situation, especially with Liam McNeely. That's kind of solely put, I would say, Indiana kind of in the front seat of that recruitment as it currently stands. January 13th today. Michigan, Arkansas, Oklahoma, kind of those other teams that I would really say are involved at this point. And then you have to go down kind of another level to see where Texas is. Obviously, a lot of uncertainty with what that staff is going to look like. Chris Beard was a significant part of that recruitment. Without him, we'll see what Texas does, but they're going to, have a long uphill battle at this point, with probably no real, kind of firm setting on who their next coach is going to be until after the season.
Yeah, and obviously we've talked about paying attention to what teams are doing during the season, and a lot of the people we've talked to said that they don't believe that plays a big impact. But it has to on whether or not you think a player is getting developed, or guys are getting developed or not. But, you look at someone like Liam McNeely, and that's a guy that I think Indiana could use right now in his position. But let's see, where are we? I want to make sure we don't go long on this segment. Raleigh Burgess, Flory Badunga, also two guys on his Indiana elite squad with Travis Perry. And I know that it used to play a role, and with Montverde, we've seen can be a connection. And Indiana has had a good relationship with Indiana Elite over the years, but I wonder do they look at guys like Logan Duncombe, who is sitting there, and that's one of the guys that I've always tried not to wonder why someone's not playing, because I always assume if they're not playing, there's a reason, but to a degree, and with what Indiana has needed at certain times this year, I'm like, okay, he's in his third season at Indiana, I believe. Is that right? Is he like a red COVID sophomore? Is that correct?
Yeah, so he came in with Tamar Bates, so obviously in their first second year, but realistically, only played about 5, 6, 7 minutes last year. Should have been redshirted in my opinion. So you don't lose that obviously that year. But yeah, I mean, he's either been injured or suspended, or have some sort of issues throughout the year and a half that he's been at Indiana up to this point. I think a lot of people, especially when Race Thompson went down, thought that he would move into a little bit more of a role, especially with the inconsistent play of Jordan Geronimo and Malik Renew. Obviously hasn't seen the floor up to this point in those 2.5 games without Race Thompson. We'll see what happens. I think everyone was kind of parading for a one big man system. And if you have Logan Duncombe in there, you can't have Trace Jackson Davis in there. Neither of them have shown, consistent ability to hit outside shots or even take outside jumpers. So if you're going towards more of an open floor, you can't play two of those guys. And I know a lot of people are obviously going to talk about, well, Jordan Geronimo and Malik Renew haven't really shown the ability to do that either. True, but they have a little bit more of that athleticism and versatility that Logan Duncombe doesn't have at this point, and just a little bit more of that strength to guard some of those bigger guys in the Big Ten. I think we'll still see some minutes from Logan Duncan moving forward, but it's going to be in really spot minute settings, especially if Trace Jackson-Davis may, get in a little bit of early foul trouble, or you really aren't getting anything out of Malik Renew or Jordan Geronimo. Those are two guys that do tend to pick up fouls a little bit more frequently. So if that does happen, then you'll probably see maybe a little bit more of a rotation in extended minutes for Logan Duncan. But, I think you have to still continue to trust the staff. If they're not playing someone, there's probably some sort of reason for that, regardless of how the last 2.5 games have gone. They're in practice every day, right? They're seeing the effort, the plays that some of these guys are making, and I think it's a lot easier for people on the outside to continue to talk about, well, so and so should be seeing more minutes, so and so probably should be on the bench. When you have to have the confidence that the staff is making the proper decisions and the right decisions when it comes to playing time. Obviously, everything else, maybe there are some conversations to be had, but in terms of playing time, I think. They're going to put the best 5 guys out there every single time in order to try to win the games. So you have to have the confidence that they're going to continue to do that moving forward.
We've got to take a break. We've got lots more coming up. We've got a preview Indiana and Wisconsin tomorrow in Bloomington and much more. We got Alec Lasley with thehoosier.com joining us right now. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat, brought to you by Go Team, where you can pick up right here at BB's or at GoTeamBites.com for those of you on the go, or whether it's your student athlete or whomever. Fresh way to get a snack in and on the go. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
What's up, man?
Not a whole lot.
Let's preview. This will just be a preview for tomorrow, and
yep.
And I will talk a little bit with you about that. You probably did not see the article in the Indy Star regarding Robbie Hummel talking about who's in worse shape, IU or Kentucky.
I briefly saw it. I didn't read much into it. But yeah, obviously that's a fun and interesting talking point.
Well, I mean, it really, let's see. He said it was sparked, their current 3-game losing streak was sparked by his injury against Iowa. They look shell-shocked after that. He believes that this is one that they will look back on and say that one hurts. Let's see, what was the other things? Defense. You look at the last couple of games, it looked like the whole team doesn't know what's going on defensively. I mean, these are damning statements coming from a guy who was very well liked by many other people. Offense. On offense, it's tough for Trace. He's getting loaded up on. Their opponents are daring him to shoot threes. They don't make a lot. They don't take a lot. Recruiting. He's done a respectable job recruiting 2 cycles, particularly with Jalen and Malik, but noted Geronimo is playing more than IU would prefer. Geronimo makes a lot of mistakes out there. He's a good athlete, but sometimes he looks like he has no idea what's going on out there. I mean, that's Goodman noted that Woodson is one of many former college stars who, after a long time away from college basketball, 40 years, are brought in by prominent programs in need of a turnaround. Perhaps they don't realize what's needed to make it happen. He identified Patrick Ewing, Penny Hardaway, Jerry Stackhouse, Chris Mullen as prime examples. They don't understand how much time it takes. And I agree with that more than anything, because that's why you've got to have a guy that lives it. Hummel says Trace Jackson-Davis has overcome the soft label, but has not developed a three-point game. He developed an 8-foot game. He says, what is his position? I think he's a great college player. He's an elite athlete, but his skill set does not translate to what the NBA is looking for. So everybody that when I say that stuff and y'all don't believe me, that came from Robbie Hummel. Every bit of that.
Yeah, I mean he's not wrong with any of that. I think that's. I think anyone can.
Other people have said, and
we'll go live in about 30 seconds, just so you know. I'll count you ready.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to get talking but even.
All right, you go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, everybody, to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Friday. It is January 13th. All right, happy birthday, sister. Appreciate everybody joining us. Coming to you from BB's Market, of course, part of the Endeavor Hospitality Wow Club. Make sure you go to the Wow Club, start earning Wow Rewards today, and stop by BB's. It's your local meat shop, bakery, no matter what you need, wherever you are. Everything's fresh and the greatest of in-house made products. It's incredible. Also brought to you by our good friends from Remax Realty. If you're in the market for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore and her 2 decades of experience. It could be the difference between you getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl, at IndyHomePros.com. Quick reminder for all of you that listen up in the region area and in and around Chicago. We will soon be on WJOB up there, and that's the IU outlet. So looking forward to joining them and them joining us. And so you guys can pick this up on radio up there. And if you live someplace where you'd like to have us on radio, call that station, let them know. Back with Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com. Alec, Indiana has got to they take on Wisconsin tomorrow, in a game that, a few weeks ago, this would have been one you would automatically just stuck in the win column because it was going to be a home game. But that no longer seems to matter with this team. And Wisconsin is no slouch. They're coming in not as loaded as they were last year, but they're playing well. I think they're 11-3 or 11-4, something like that. But Indiana they have to find themselves. They are completely lost. The break, I read something that Robbie Hummel said, various different comments, whether it's about Jordan Geronimo looking completely lost, whether it's the team looking lost on defense. I was at the women's game last night, and I said this earlier before you were with us, but I noticed several things that the women do that the men just don't. They have shooters that will shoot the ball. They have shooters that will look to shoot the ball. They have shooters that will look to score and get to the rim. They close out defensively on three-point shooters. They play good, hard-nosed defense. You want to talk about playing together? They lost Grace Berger for all that time. She comes right back and seamlessly fits right in to a team that she hadn't played with for weeks. And that is all of those things are missing from the men's side. They don't have shooters that look to shoot the ball and look to score. Minus Jalen Hood-Schifino, they get nothing out of. They get no consistency from Tamar Bates, from Trey Galloway, from Miller Kopp. And if one of those three do not perform well in each and every game, I don't think Indiana has a chance to win a game.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things, especially related to Miller Kopp, right? I mean, Miller Kopp is not a guy who's going to create his own offense. Everyone has known that dating back to his days at Northwestern.
From off the ball and getting to the rim, I understand that, but he's not looking for shots.
So that's not solely on him. He's a guy who needs to come off screens. He's a guy who needs open space to shoot the three. And I think that's more of a lack of scheme and a lack of play calling from the coaching staff to get one of the 3 games ago, one of the best shooters in the Big Ten, an open look. I think that's been the biggest thing. There's been teams that have played zone against this team, which, typically you should have a little bit more open space to shoot the ball. And there was no play calling to get any of these shooters, even Tamar Bates, an open look, right? I mean, even Jalen Hood-Schifino, a lot of this even dates back to early in the season when he was struggling with his jumper. A lot of his looks are contested near the end of the shot clock, unless he's coming down in transition or in that secondary break and likes to have a little pull-up jumper. I think the staff has really let down some of these players in terms of not getting them involved. I think at some point it has to fall on them and not on the players, because they know what Miller Kopp's best asset is, and that's shooting the ball. They know he's not a guy who's going to create his own offense off of the dribble. He needs other players to do that for him, which is not a bad thing, but you need to be able to utilize that. I mean, he took 2 shots. Last time out, he's taken 3 threes in the last 2 games. He's been non-existent, and if you're not getting any production out of him on the perimeter, he's not a very solid and consistent, I should say, defensive player. He's had okay moments throughout the year and throughout his year plus at Indiana here, but he needs help getting his shot off, and Indiana's not helping him. When it comes to Tamar Bates, I still go back to, moving him into the starting lineup was not the answer that was needed. I was very adamant about this. Bringing him off the bench was a much better use of his role than moving him into the starting lineup, because at some point it comes down to just, at any point in the game, you're not going to have those 5 starters on the floor. So if you're not going to be able to respond to runs, if you're not going to be able to respond to adversity and break through that wall, it doesn't matter who's starting the game. You saw that against Iowa. You saw that against Penn State, right? That was a much better start. And they ended up taking Jordan Geronimo off the floor, and Penn State went on a 13-3 run with him on the bench after those, which I think were his best 6, 7, 8 minutes of the season to start that Penn State game. So, I think regardless of kind of how the players are playing, it comes down to the coaching staff. And this is one thing that I have stressed since Mike Woodson took over. The in-game adjustments, in my opinion, have been very poor from this coaching staff, especially out of halftime in certain scenarios, out of timeouts. When they need a bucket, there seems to be no go-to play call that they can lean their hat on and say, hey, we need a bucket. It's always let's give it to
Trace Jackson-Davis, or Jalen Hood-Schifino tries to create.
Exactly. And, Jalen Hood-Schifino creating more oftentimes than not is a good play, right? Because he's going to get to the rim, going to get fouled, or going to create for someone else. But you can't rely just on that. And yeah, some of that is without Xavier Johnson, right, being on the floor. But you're not going to have him for, the next 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, right? You're going to have a lot of games without him. And, you can't just rely on throwing the ball into Trace Jackson-Davis every time, because teams have found a way to take him out of the games. And you would much rather him average 5, 6, 7 assists a game than score 30 plus, in my opinion, if you're coming from the opposition, because pretty well that those guys are not going to hit those shots consistently. So if you're forcing the ball out of Trace Jackson-Davis's hands on a more consistent basis and forcing him to average 5, 6, 7 assists, then you're doing your part as a defense. And there just seems to be no overall play calling and scheme, like I said, that gets these guys open looks, gets these guys involved. When was the last time we saw a true open look for any of these shooters, right? I think you may have to go back to probably that Iowa game, or even a little bit further to really see consistent open looks from these shooters. And half the time it comes on a secondary break where Miller Kopp is trailing and there's miscommunication on the perimeter and he gets an open look from 3. I look back to the days where you had a lot of these really good shooters in the whether it be the Tom Crean era, or even at some points in the Archie Miller era, where obviously they didn't have great shooters, but they had some guys who could knock down shots, and there were at least being plays called where these guys would be coming off of screens. I have not seen any of that happen with this team consistently enough. And you go back to the Robbie Hummel comment, right, about them not being a good enough shooting team. And they're a much better shooting team this year than they have been. That's very adamant. I'm very adamant about that. You can look at the stats, and it is a much better shooting team, but they're only taking one more three per game. And you're not going to win games if you're still in the bottom half to bottom third of teams in the country at shooting the three. This is a 3-point shooting game, and a shooting game that at least the NBA has turned into, and it's morphing into college basketball. And more kids are able to shoot the three ball. So if you're not able to shoot the three, or at least attempt shooting the three, then you're not going to be able to win games. And that's obviously what's been hurting Indiana. I mean, look no further than the Penn State game, right? 18-4 in terms of threes, and what is that, 54-12 differential behind the 3-point line. That's that's ridiculous in its own self, that you can't score more than 12 points from three, but also that on the flip side, that you're being outscored by 30 points from behind the 3-point line. That should never happen, and that just goes back to, I think, poor scheming offensively from this staff to not get these guys open.
Do you think that, is Mike Woodson trying too hard to force an offensive style that just is easily defended right now with what he has? It's either, force it to Trey Jackson-Davis and let him try to do something from 3 feet away, or Jalen Hood-Schifino tries to make some magic work. And there's no sets, like you said. That other than that, there doesn't seem to be any flow, any concept of an offense when that doesn't work, when it's not Trace or Jalen Hood-Schifino, and it just gets this. You can look and see that there just does not seem to be a good pattern. There's a pattern, but it's not good.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, there's a significant pattern, but it's not a good consistent trend that they're going for. And again, at the end of the day, you need to get, if you're looking to space the floor even more, you need to get more opportunities for these shooters. And there's just no off-ball action. Obviously, everyone knows how stagnant this offense is, especially when the ball goes into Trace Jackson-Davis. And even if it doesn't go into him, it's just so stagnant. There's no cutters, and that was one thing. It has to do with energy, just enthusiasm, and just willpower to be out on the floor. But in that Penn State game, Penn State was passing the ball with authority and passing it with some sort of goal in mind, right? Indiana was just passing it to passing it. There was no emphasis on any cut. There was no creativity on any cut. And that's one thing that I think is really sad to see from this Indiana team, because they do have the talent. They have the athletes on their roster to be able to be a fun offense, right? We've seen it at times, their ability to be fun to watch offensively, but they just don't do it consistently enough, and they don't look like they're playing as a unit. And maybe that's because a lot of these guys don't have confidence in some of these players who are now having to step into larger roles. But at some point, you're going to have that confidence in them, or else there's not going to be any chance of moving forward here. And I think the you can talk X's and O's all you want, but this team has the talent to go out and at least not even the talent, but they have the players to go out there and at least play tough and play with energy. And that's something that you really don't need any talent or skill for. All right, there. Thought that was me, but it looks like that is Jim. But yeah, I mean, I look at the end of the day, the Indiana offense just needs some sort of kick in the butt to kind of get going, and it just starts, Jim, what I was saying with with just some sort of energy, because you don't need skill, you don't need talent to do that. You just need the ability to go out there and just not get beat, not get embarrassed, and that's what Indiana's unfortunately been doing on both ends of the floor the last 2.5 games.
Last night, Minnesota upsets Ohio State, wins their first Big Ten game of the year. Iowa was 0-3, Indiana lost to them. Northwestern was playing for a share of first place the other night, and Rutgers is now a half game out of first. Indiana finds itself tied for dead last in the conference at 1-4. That's not what anyone expected, and I know everyone's going to talk about injuries, and yes, that affects things, but there's no excuse for a team that was talked about being so deep and so good to be sitting in last place right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely no place for that. I mean, if you look at the start of the season, or even after the Arizona and Kansas losses, right? If you're sitting at 1-4, a quarter of the way through Big Ten play, I think, and in dead last in the Big Ten, no one saw that coming. No one expected that to happen with this team, with these expectations, with this roster, and they're a much better team than 1-4. They should be. And that, again, just comes down to just mental toughness, physical toughness, just the ability to go out there and stop the bleeding. And they have not been able to do that. And that's been the biggest disappointment, I would say, from people watching this team, is they've had, regardless of the injuries, right? Because these things were still going on earlier in the season at times. But to not have the energy and the toughness and the fight to go out there and know what it takes to win big games. We saw Indiana at the second half of last year and the last couple weeks of the season play with some of the most will I've seen an Indiana team play with in the last 5-6 years. The stretch that they had to win a couple games in the Big Ten tournament, obviously to beat Wyoming in the first 4 game, they got a little bit of a taste of what it is to play in those big games, and to turn around and have some of the guys put out, pretty embarrassing performances game after game after game the last month has been the biggest disappointment from me, just because they got a little bit of that last year and they were able to turn it around. And you thought, regardless of kind of who was on the floor, they all had that common goal of wanting not only to get back to the NCAA tournament, to make a little bit of a run, but also to win and play in crucial games late in February. And they're going to be playing in crucial games late in February now, but it's to make the NCAA tournament. It's not to win a Big Ten title, because this team is a far cry from anything from a top half of a Big Ten team at the moment, just the way that they seem completely broken.
So Indiana will face Wisconsin tomorrow at 1:00. What should fans expect? What are you looking for in that game? What is Wisconsin looking to come in here and do?
Yeah, I mean, look, Wisconsin's another tough team, very similar to the last few opponents that Indiana's played, right? Not overly deep team, only play about 7 guys, and Tyler Wall, their leading scorer, and second leading rebounders, missed the last 2 games with a foot injury. We'll see if he's going to be able to get back in action there. If he's not, obviously a little bit significant for Indiana there, and a positive for IU. But Chucky Hepburn's back, really improved as an overall shooter and scorer in the backcourt. Overall decent shooting team, shooting about 37% from 3. So another one where, not to the extent that Penn State shoots the 3, but still making about 9 threes a game, and a team that relies a lot on that 3 ball, just due to especially without Tyler Wall, the undersized nature of that front court. So if Indiana's not ready to go and not ready to see some 8-0 runs, 9-0 runs from Wisconsin, they're going to get down in a hole, not only pretty quickly, but just see the lead continue to stretch, because that's the biggest thing that Indiana needs to be able to do, not only tomorrow, but consistently throughout the rest of the season here. Be able to respond to runs, be able to get stops. And, we heard Trey Galloway talk about momentum comes from getting stops. He said that at the end of post-game after that Penn State loss, and they were not able to get enough stops, obviously. And in order to create some of that momentum, you need to do it defensively. And this team needs to find a way to get some of that defensive identity back and playing with toughness, because in the Big Ten, you need to be able to do that. And they obviously have not shown that for 2.5 games here, and even stretching a little bit further back there as well.
Tyler Wall, a big piece of Wisconsin's offense. He's missed their last 2 games, and those resulted in losses for the Badgers. He's 50-50 for Indiana, but I'm going to bet that he plays, averaging over 13 points and 6.5 rebounds. But Indiana is also looking at a lot of streaks here. They've lost 2 straight in Bloomington. They have lost 10 out of their last 11 to Wisconsin, period, anywhere. And, of course, we know about the 66-year losing streak in Wisconsin. But Indiana's going – we keep saying this over and over. They're going to have to do this and they're going to have to do that. We know what they need to do. It's can they step up? Can they find guys that actually step up and do what they need to do? Because we haven't seen that. And whether that's Miller Kopp, Tamar Bates, Trey Galloway, but somebody has to. Otherwise, like I said, there's no way Indiana cannot win with Trace Jackson-Davis and Jalen Nickoson doing all the work. They've got to have somebody else contributing, and it's not going to be the same guy every game, but it has to be one of those 3 that has to start developing a more consistent role.
Yeah, and then, at this point, I think it needs to be a little bit more than just one, right? You need Tamar Bates as that consistent third guy, and then you need to find some way to get Miller Kopp more shot opportunities. And we not to beat a dead horse, but again, the offense has been a shell of itself over the last month, even at times with Xavier Johnson in that lineup. And it needs to get back to getting downhill, creating a lot of opportunities off of ball screens, opening up the paint, and being able to kick out to open shooters, right? The ball needs to move a lot quicker, and that, again, takes no skill. It just takes effort and the ability to pass the ball with a little bit of crispness and not just look to dribble the ball 10, 15 times before you figure out what you're doing. Super easy to guard that, obviously, and that's what makes Indiana super easy to guard, because they just don't have any ability to get into the paint and create opportunities.
Alec, what is coming up next on the Hoosier.com today and tomorrow for Indiana basketball?
Yeah, so we'll have
don't forget Indiana basketball as well.
Yeah, we actually have a story up from the women's game last night, from that big win against Maryland. But we'll have a Q&A later with Travis Perry, obviously the newest offer in the 2024 class for Indiana, a significant one in my opinion there, and look a little bit more into some of the recent developments for Leah McNeely and some of the other 2024 4 and 5 stars that Indiana's targeting and going after pretty heavily.
Appreciate it, man. Make sure you give him a follow, Alec Lasley at thehoosier.com. Go there and make sure you get complete coverage of Indiana athletics, recruiting, and news. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
You as well. Hey, we're brought to you by Barbara Pop Real Estate Services. For those of you that live down and around Louisville, Floyd, Clark, Harris, and Scott counties in southern Indiana, they have served those communities for 3 decades, and no one will get you in a home quicker, easier, and less expensive than Barbara Pop Real Estate Services. Reach out to Barbara at barbarapop.com or our friend Matt Lincoln, Matt at barbarapop.com. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio from BB's here, part of the Endeavor Hospitality Network. Right after this, Zach Osterman.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
What the world are they talking about over here?
If you're able to get back to it, even at the end of the show, I really think that Indiana-Kentucky conversation is interesting.
Oh, I'm going to – yeah, that would be that's good with Zach. We'll do half Big Ten commish and half IU. Okay, humble. Which probably means 4 total questions. Lee, man, what's up, brother?
I'm trying to figure out what happened between North Carolina games and
Not a lot, unfortunately. I can move this stuff. You can come over here and sit.
Hey Zach, whenever Jim gets back, I'll count you guys in when he's ready.
Holy moly, macaroni.
All right. Whenever you're ready, Jim, I'll count you guys in.
8.
All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you here on this Friday, of course, from BB's Market here in Bloomington, part of the Endeavor Hospitality Wow Club. Make sure you go to the MyWow Network and sign up for the Wow Club. Start earning Wow rewards today to great places like BB's and Feast Market and Cellar, who has an incredible selection of wines with a sommelier on staff, Mexican, gourmet sandwiches, etc. Zach Osterman from the Indy Star joins us now. Zach, how are you doing, bro?
How we doing?
Cannot complain. Just trying to get to the next day. Get you to turn your volume down just a tick so it's not reverberating back there. Couple things. The Big Ten is without a commissioner right now, which is a little surprising. Is Kevin Warren has moved on, and not him leaving is, I guess it is a surprise because you don't see conference commissioners leave that often, especially as early into his tenure as he is, when things are going very well. And not only that, but bigger things are on the horizon. But I'm not sure that he ever seemed to, I don't know what the words are, really connect with the conference situation. And I think that, I forgot to look his name back up, but the guy that's the ACC commissioner now that probably should have been Big Ten commissioner last time around, but I'm not sure if they go that direction or not this time, but they have an opportunity to right the ship.
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying Kevin Warren's tenure has been a bit volatile, and I think, you know, if we were just talking purely in terms of KPIs, I think he would feel justified in saying I met my remit. You know, even if you sweep COVID to one side in the sense that, you know, when he was hired, nobody had any idea that was coming. Nobody had any frame of reference for how to deal with that. You know, the three big things on his desk would have been playoff expansion, the new media rights deal, and any potential response to conference realignment. And he, you know, as much as one can, he probably nailed those three things. There were definitely some missteps, the COVID season, the 2020 football season. I think it's fair to say that at the institutional level, he probably won't be terribly missed. You know, I don't want to just sort of start gossiping around the schoolyard, but I don't think it's it's a galloping shock to anybody that the schools at times really felt like the conference office was kind of aloof to their needs under Warren, particularly in their concerns. I think particularly in things that didn't revolve directly around football. But I think Kevin Warren, again, would look at it and say, okay, but I had three big problems on my desk that I had to deal with, and I dealt with them during a pandemic. And that, you know, I deserve some credit for that. And he probably does. I do think it, you know, the final sort of fallout from some of that remains to be seen, but it will be fascinating to see where the Big Ten goes here. You know, the Big Ten went outside the box before anybody else did. You know, the SEC just elevated one of Mike Slive's deputies. The Big Ten hired next, a couple years later, 3 or 4 years later. They hired Kevin Warren out of the NFL. And then 2 of the next 3 conference commissioner hires were George Kliavkoff to the Pac-12, who is very much on the media rights side, worked for MGM, I think MGM Grand at one point. The Big 12 commissioner's name is escaping me. which it shouldn't because he is.
Had the son, the guy that had the son on, or the current commissioner, or the one that had the son that played on the high-use team?
Well, that's Larry Scott. That's the former Pac-12 commissioner. Brett Yormark is who I'm thinking of, who they hired from Rock Nation to run the Big 12. Yormark's an NIU alum. That's why I should.
Big 12.
I should remember his name. My point is, what was interesting to me about the Warren hire at the time was if you go back and look at the Council of Presidents and Chancellors who makes this hire, there were a lot of people like Michael McRobbie and Mitch Daniels on there who had been in their jobs for a very long time, who were very settled, were very sort of, when I say tenured, I don't mean in terms of faculty, I mean in terms of they had been in those positions for several years, many of them. And they had a commissioner, kind of keeping one hand on the wheel through the process, and Jim Delaney, who'd been around forever. It was a very sort of establishment group, and it made a very un-establishment hire. And I think it's going to be fascinating what a COPC that is a little younger in terms of years on the job and is not going to have someone like Jim Delaney in the room, although Delaney may consult with them. I think that's there's every possibility that happens. Do they go back to something that feels a little bit more establishment, like trying to prize Jim Phillips, who was the Northwestern AD, away from the ACC, or do they try to go in the NCAA's direction, hire someone with political connections? I think the one thing I will say is I think the Big Ten needs to find somebody who's going to be very forward-facing and very forward-thinking on NIL, because I think that long-term, the likeliest outcome to me is that NIL becomes an issue that becomes very, very relevant from a governance standpoint at the conference level. And so I think that's maybe the big item front and center for the next commissioner. Warren has cleared the decks on some important stuff. He's helped position the Big Ten for playoff expansion, conference expansion. He's delivered this big media rights deal, won't need to be redone for a few years. I think that the thing this next commissioner is going to have to deal with in a really head-on way is NIL.
This is a very attractive job, very attractive with the new money TV rights deal coming into play with the UCLA, USC coming on as well into the Big Ten. And like I said, I would think and hope that they look to the ACC for someone who got away previously. But other than that, whoever comes in has a lot of ammunition and a lot of big cards in their deck to play with.
I think that's fair. I mean, it is one of the most important jobs in college sports. There are ways in which it's more important than the president of the NCAA. I mean, there just are. There are ways in which commissioner of the Big Ten, commissioner of the SEC are, you can make an argument those are the two most important administrative jobs in college sports. And again, I think, if we try to kind of play the tape through to the end of the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, I think that's only going to continue to sort of strengthen, for lack of a better term. Those are the two conferences that are going to control the landscape from the perspective of branding because of the realignment moves they've made. Those are the two conferences that are going to have the most sort of political sway in the playoff structure as it moves forward. Remember, there's a playoff television deal that's got to be revised here. The Big Ten's going to want a seat at the table for Fox. And those are the two conferences that I think ultimately might wind up swinging the heaviest bat. I mean, if you talk to people who are smarter than me about NIL, everyone's feeling is that the logical next step here is revenue sharing, and maybe the logical last step to some extent is revenue sharing. And the most simplistic way that happens is basically just setting aside a chunk of media rights deals for athletes and saying, essentially that's NIL. That we can quantify roughly how much each one of these games is worth. Fans are tuning into the games to see the players. The players deserve a cut of that. And then it becomes NIL-based revenue sharing. And I don't want to get overly political, but, looking at how much time it just took us to pick a Speaker of the House, I cannot imagine there's enough function in Congress to suddenly pass some sweeping, complex NIL legislation. I just don't think it's that important to people. I think what's more likely is we get to some form of revenue sharing that winds up moving a lot more governance to the conference level, because the conferences are the ones with these TV deals. And so I think that really, in a lot of ways, maybe the 10-year outlook for a conference like the Big Ten, a commissioner in that job, is partly to be thinking about essentially being the person who's going to lead the charge to write the rules for how you pay athletes as de facto employees. I think that's possible. That is a very simplistic way. That is reducing a very complex issue down to one sentence, and I recognize the danger in that. But I'm just to kind of give a very sort of quick abstract of why I think NIL is going to be such an important piece of this job going forward. That's why. Jim, I think you're on mute.
Yes, I was. Thank you. Sorry about that. There was a piece in the Indy Star referencing Robbie Hummel on the Field of 68 podcast he did with Jeff Goodman. He said a lot of things in there that a lot of us people have said. But coming from him, it seems to mean more. He's a very well-liked analyst by even IU fans. But he said things like shell-shocked. The whole team looks like it doesn't know what's going on. Geronimo making a lot of mistakes out there. They're playing him more than they need to. In referencing to having a long-time NBA coach come in. Other coaches that have tried to do that, and they just don't understand the amount of time it actually takes for a college coach versus the NBA. There's several things that are all valid points and that a lot of us have said.
I haven't, forgive me, I haven't picked up Robbie's comments yet, but I do think a lot of what you said there is valid. I think, particularly just around this team's mentality, essentially, and where this team is at. And, listen, you and I have been around this program long enough to know that and I would argue it's not right, but, the atmosphere around this program can turn toxic in a hurry if the fans start to get frustrated. And I don't, listen, again, I'm not saying that's right. I heard a story once, and this was secondhand, so I can't promise it's 100% true. Excuse me. I heard a story that Jay Wright, one of the things Jay Wright said he liked about Villanova was that when he was winning, there was a great culture there, fan support, good city, good hoops culture, in a great conference, all that. And when he was struggling, there was some cover because, no one would worry about him until the Eagles season was over. And if Villanova wasn't pulling up any trees, then all he had to do was survive until the Phillies broke camp in spring training. And then Villanova would move down to page 7 and no one would really worry about it. I like that story just because I think there are a lot of programs, even really good programs in this country we would consider elite or borderline elite, where you can have a bad week, you can have a bad month, you can lose 5 of 8, or you can lose 4 of 5 or 5 of 6, and nobody sets the house on fire because, for whatever reason, it just doesn't happen. This place isn't like that. We can argue endlessly about whether it should be, about how you fix it, about how we got here, how Indiana got here, I should say. You and I didn't do it. But the reality is this place is like that. And I wrote after the Penn State game that Mike Woodson's biggest challenge here is not X's and O's, although obviously there are some things that technically or schematically need to change. It is getting this group through the mental and emotional challenge of basically dealing with what happens when this fan base kind of turns on a season. Because there's a lot of basketball left, and this whole idea of, well, the season's over, they're just going to lose every game is obviously silly. But that sort of attitude can, sort of permeate social media. It can permeate, one-to-one interactions on campus. We saw the letter that Trace Jackson Davis posted a couple weeks ago on Twitter from a fan. That is one of the difficulties of this place. Every place has challenges, and that's one of them. And I think for Woodson, it's going to be important that he manages the mental and emotional side of his team right now, of paramount importance. And I think too, it should be said, it's going to be a challenge for him in the sense that when you're a coach in the NBA, you can have a team that's going through a funk. But number one, they'll play a lot. So, yes, you'll have maybe less time to work on things away from the court because you're recovering and playing and recovering and playing. But the flip side is they get a lot of time to play their way through things that might be wrong. And number two, even removing for a moment that you're probably under a greater microscope from a pressure and an expectation perspective at Indiana than you are in most NBA franchises. I'm betting it's a lot easier to be an Atlanta Hawk than an Indiana Hoosier, from a stress standpoint. You also, in the NBA, you're in a different city every night. You're not playing in front of your, you can go 2 weeks or maybe more like a week and a half where you play 4 games and not one of them's in front of your fans. So if you're struggling, if things are tough, hey, sometimes that West Coast swing comes at a good time. It's good to get out of town. It's good to get out of New York and go out and play the Clippers, play the Lakers, play the Kings, play the Jazz, and be removed from it. You can't remove yourself from it at the college level, and you can't remove yourself from it particularly at a place where scrutiny is going to be so intense. And I think that the learning process for Mike Woodson might be a little bit basically, how do you manage this at the college level where you really can't remove these kids from the environment that is causing them so much stress for more than a few hours or maybe a day and a half.
Zach Osterman, will appreciate you, man. See you tomorrow as Indiana takes on Wisconsin at 1 o'clock as they try to climb out of the cellar of the Big Ten after Minnesota knocked off Ohio State to pull Indiana into a tie for that tomorrow. But thank you so much, brother. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, as always.
Zach Osterman from the Indy Star. Make sure you give him a follow and be a subscriber. Keep local papers alive. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio. After this, Michael Lewis, the head coach at Ball State. Talk to him about what his first year is like being head coach at Ball State. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends from Metalworks Brewing Company, located on the square in Bloomington in the former Function Brewery, catty-corner from Cabello, just right off of 6th Street. Their desire of being a part of the community, craft metalwork, and great draft beer. Stop in or at any Endeavor hospitality location, enjoy Metalworks Brewing. Back with Michael Lewis right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
So just you're going to run that in 3 minutes, starting in 3 minutes, so we'll keep the same breaks?
Yeah. And I have the video downloaded and everything, so I just got to present it, get it ready to go.
Welcome in Michael Lewis.
Not yet. There you go.
No, not yet. Brother Singh.
I got it ready to go. So,
Thank you.
at least we know the sound's working on it. That's good.
Sit down here if you want, brother.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you got it? Yeah, you can sit down there.
Hey, when did it Wilson?
Yesterday. It all happened. It all happened yesterday. I gotta go outside and close my windows.
Okay. Hey, is it okay if I play the video in 30 seconds?
Say that again.
Is it okay if I play the video in 30 seconds, or do you want me to wait for you to come back?
Well, you can do it whenever the break comes back, but
Okay. Just take you. I just want to make sure it was okay to do when you were away.
yeah, because I think you can start it.
Okay. Yeah, I can.
I think I've got an out in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then I'm gonna go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Head coach of Ball State University. Love saying that. Mike, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Cannot complain. Good to have you on. First time. Is this the first time as I can't? I know. I think we had you on after you got the job, but midway through the season, you guys just came off of a 7-game winning streak. You're midway through your first season. What's it like being the head guy now? You're in the midst of your first season.
It's a lot of work, a lot of fun. It's probably everything that I anticipated being, and then some. We got a really good group of guys. I've got an outstanding staff. And we're just trying to build a program that this university and the community and the state of Indiana can be proud of.
And a lot of noise coming out of Muncie. Like I said, the 7-game winning streak. I know you lost the last time out, but 11-5 right now overall. So things trending up in Muncie. A lot of people are happy. You've created some buzz up there. I've seen you making commercials, getting the students out, getting your acting chops going. How was that making those first of all, how's that being the guy that has to make the commercials?
Well, I tell you, like when you're trying to build a program and you want to build it to the right way and the way that we want to and become the program that we eventually want to become, it takes everybody. And it takes the whole village, and you got to do a little bit of everything. And we've had some really good reception, here from the community and from the state. Very happy that we've been able to put out a product on the floor that competes and plays and shows some toughness and some heart that Indiana basketball fans like and enjoy and appreciate. We've been able to win a few games here as of late that helps continue to build on some of that, and we still got a long way to go. But we've had a lot of support. The community's come out. We're working on getting the students. We're slinging free concessions, free beer, the whole thing, but it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun to see the community get behind this team, because I think this team has played in a way that they deserve that. And so, we were, here early in our conference season, we got off to a good start, kind of tripped up the other night at Ohio, that I think we're all disappointed about. But this team has really grown in a lot of ways over a short period of time. And the exciting thing for me as a coach is I still feel like there's a lot of growth left in this team. And this can be a team that, really begins the whole process of what we're trying to get done here in Muncie and building a program, like I said, that this university and community and the state as a whole can be proud of.
And I know it's hard for you to answer this question since this is your first time being a head coach, but I'm going to assume the first year is the hardest year because you come in and you haven't recruited the guys that you basically are coming into a pro job. You're dealing with the players you've been dealt. How hard is that to start with a program that you had nothing to do with recruiting any of the players, nothing to do with the players that you have? I don't mean anything like that, but I'm just saying the challenge of that.
Yeah, well, like you said, I don't know any different. This is what we had, and it's, even though there were some people on the roster, like we had, Peyton Sparks and Jalen Sellers and Bashir Jihad were in the transfer portal. Even though they were here last year, they would already put their names in the portal, and we were able to get those young men out of the portal. So we had to re-recruit them to Ball State and sell them on what we wanted to accomplish as a program, how we wanted to go about it, how they could help us do that. And obviously we're really pleased that they decided to stay and be Cardinals. And then, we added a few recruits of our own to go along with what was here. And, like the biggest thing that I can, those guys, I got to give them all a ton of credit because, for a young group to go through a coaching change, it's not easy. Like they didn't, half of these guys did not sign up to play for me. They signed up to play for somebody else. And to be open to change, be willing to change, and to go about the things that we're asking them to do that we feel like, lead to winning. It's been great to see these guys experience some success.
I'm sure they're enjoying it and having fun as well. And you mentioned earlier about different ways of getting the crowds out, free beer, free concessions. Can you imagine back when you were in college if they were offering free beer to you, the students, or to any of us? I'm like,
I might have been in the student section instead on the court.
I'm telling you, man. I'm like, it's just amazing. Even now when I walk by someone, but I realized Indiana played at Xavier earlier this year, and they're considered to Indiana, they're smaller, but it's the venue. It seems like these places, and I would probably put Muncie in that, have almost become a social gathering, these games, because of the advent of having beer and things like that. They're becoming social gatherings, and that benefited. I thought it benefited Xavier with the crowds and things like that. I don't know if you're seeing that or if that's part of what you're doing.
That's what we're trying to build. We've got a little pocket of, here in East Central Indiana that, obviously, loves their basketball. And, we play during a time of the year where it's not real great to be outside, and so, why can't we throw the biggest party, in town once a week in Worthen Arena? Why can't we be the place in Muncie to be seen, and let's be that social gathering. Let's be the place to be, once a week, and let's continue to get out there and put ourselves out there from a marketing perspective and try to turn it into that. And we have to do our part as a basketball program. We got to go out there and compete in a way that people want to watch. We need to have some success, which we're in the middle of doing, and we've got to continue to do that. But you got to put a product out there on the floor that people enjoy watching and want to get behind and want to support. And a lot of credit has to go to our players for playing a style of basketball that the people here in Indiana appreciate. And they've really grown from a toughness standpoint. They're playing hard, competing. We've had some victories where we've had to come from behind where things weren't necessarily going our way and weren't the prettiest, but they found a way. And it's been a cool experience to watch these guys grow up from the time that we got here as a staff until now, and of having some success. And you first, you got to learn how to win, and then you got to learn how to handle success. And we got a dose of reality the other night at Ohio, and we're looking to bounce back from that. But getting back to your point, there's no reason why, the social gathering, there's no reason why we can't be the place to be once a week here in Muncie, Indiana.
When it comes to recruiting, what's the difference between recruiting as the head coach instead of recruiting for the head coach?
Well, I haven't really approached it that much different. I think it's, I think in today's era, these guys want true and honest relationships and with the head coach. And that doesn't come through the assistants. And our staff has done a great job of recognizing players that they feel like fit, and bringing guys to me that I need to recruit. And, so I'm, probably not recruiting the mass number that I did as an assistant, but I'm just as heavily involved in the recruiting, as I was. It's just, a little bit more dialed in and focused, because I think that's huge with today's players is the relationship with the head coach. And, I just try to be me and who I am, and very honest, in my evaluations and my expectations. And I don't want a kid to come here to Ball State and be here for 2 months and be like, Coach, you didn't tell me it was going to be like this. Like, I want to tell them exactly how it's going to be, what our expectations are, how we're going to go about working towards winning. And I don't want there to be any surprises. They can say a lot of things about our program, but I don't want them to ever say one of our coaches lied to them. And so, we've had a lot of success. Each one of our assistants had a lot of success doing it that way. I've had a lot of success from a recruiting standpoint in doing it that way, and just really believe in true, clear, honest communication. And I think that is huge in the recruiting world today. There's too many people, in my opinion, that are scared to tell young people the truth these days. And I think they crave that.
Why is that, Mike, that you think that there are guys that aren't able to be completely honest?
Well, I think people are scared of the transfer. Like, they're scared of kids changing high schools. They're changing colleges, switching AAU teams, and I don't feel like you can win any other way. And so I just believe in being honest from the beginning. This program's not for everybody. Program X isn't for everybody. Like, you got to find what fits. And I think, too many people are, just don't want to tell these kids the truth. And then when they get hit with the truth for the first time and they experience a little bit of adversity, they run. That's all they know. And, I think it's just a different time. And, it's okay to fail. And it's what are you going to do about it? What do you learn from it? How do you grow from it? And there's a lot of different factors that go into that, whether it's adults and their communication with young people. It's hard for me to relate. I didn't grow up worrying about how many hearts or likes or retweets I got. And kids are growing up in a society now where that's where they put all their self-worth in how many people like their posts, or they get angry, or that friendships are ruined because, well, somebody didn't retweet my tweet, or they didn't heart my post. Well, who cares? Like, in the grand scheme of things, nobody really cares, and basketball and life in general is a production-based business, and you either produce and you grow in your career, or you're, whether you're a player or in your business career, or whatever it is you choose to do, or you don't. And you've got to be able to learn how to navigate those things. And that's where I think athletics is the greatest teaching tool there is because you get to a high enough level in athletics, you're going to get hit with adversity. You're going to fail, you're going to lose. And you've got to be able to accept that and learn and grow from it. You can't always run from it.
Tell me about having Jamal Meeks on the staff, what that's been like. First of all, how did you guys come together? Because Jamal was played before you in the late 80s, early 90s, and you came along later. How did you guys get together?
Well, I think Jamal would come back around the program, and I think that was something that was really cool. At least, me personally, I loved, whether you're coming to a timeout or running out of the tunnel or a practice on a Tuesday, having the former players back, and I thought Coach Nye did a great job of keeping those guys connected, and they were always around. And so that's when I first got to know him, was when I was a player and he was back. And then, we've kept in touch, and he was into coaching, and he's unbelievable to have around. The guy never has a bad day. Even the day he had a heart attack and put a big scare in us, he never has a bad day. He's got a really good way with the players. Tons and tons of energy on a daily basis. And he's a great guy that you can't help but pick up his energy and feed off his energy a little bit every day. And like I said, when he gave us a hell of a scare, but it's great. And you could tell like his relationship with the players when I had to, sit in the locker room and explain to those guys, what had happened to Jamal and their reaction. Like it bothered them, and you can't fake that type of raw emotion. And so it was good when he came back and he had to take it slow for a little bit, but he's doing great and makes a huge impact on our program on a daily basis.
Yeah, and talk about having. I think of him and you guys kind of remind me of the same. Todd Leary, we on the show last night from doing a game, talked about Jamal and when he played, he was one of the tough guys that they got their toughness from, and it didn't matter who you were, how big you were. And I remember you were the similar type player as well. So that has to be something that your players are very fortunate to have, to get it from two different guys like that. But how are you guys different, similar as coaches?
Yes and no. I think you don't want to have your staff full of guys that are just like you. Right. I want guys on my staff that cover my blind spots. But guys that look at basketball and look at this opportunity for these younger guys and have an appreciation for it in the same way that I do. And I think we have that with the staff that we have. And I always say the worst thing that could ever be said about a basketball player, in my opinion, is that he's soft. Like if you want to argue that I couldn't go right or Jamal couldn't shoot or whatever, like we can discuss that. It doesn't matter. But there's not too many people that could say that myself or Jamal Meeks didn't play hard, and I think that that can carry over. Like you can get by with some toughness and guys that just love the game and love to compete. If you love to compete, you hate to lose. Like you're gonna play your ass off in a way that you're gonna do everything you can to try to win. And I think you see that in college basketball on a nightly basis. You see some teams that beat teams that have perceived more talent. They compete harder, they play harder, they play smarter. It just means more. And we want to build a roster here and a basketball team here that has talented players, but also has respect for the game, and wants to put winning above anything else.
Michael, I cannot thank you enough, man. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Congratulations on how things are going right now, and I hope they continue to go in those winning ways.
Well, I appreciate it. We've created a little noise here to start with, but like I said, we got a dose of reality the other night. I think our guys will learn and grow from that, and we're just we played 16 games with the halfway point, and we hope with our best basketballs in front of us, and we can continue to make the people around here excited about our program.
I'm sure that will be the case, and we look forward to hearing more about it. And we're going to try to talk to Jamal here sometime soon in the near future to see what it's like to coach under Michael Lewis. Can you imagine having coached under Michael Lewis and Bob Knight? Wow, he's got both of those covered. I'll have to think of something for you to fit under. But I can't thank you enough, man. It's always fun talking to you, and it's a blast seeing how things are going for you.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet. Michael Lewis, the head coach of the Ball State Cardinals, with us. We're back with more on Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Going. Hey, bro, what do you want me to ask about Roland? What's up, Keegan?
How's it going?
Pretty good, buddy. How are you?
Good. This smoke and rumor mill about the quarterback edition is interesting.
We were just talking about that. Yeah. Apparently, Indiana has one on the hook.
I think it's one of two, and then I think there's a dream one that everyone wants that probably won't happen. But Chance Nolan.
He's on it. I don't know who about him.
That was a good interview. The thing that he can be underneath is playing under Bob Knight and coaching under Mick Cronin.
Well,
because they're not too far apart in hot-headedness.
Yeah, but yeah, he may be more hot-headed than Michael.
Yeah.
But
That's why when he said, "I don't like having coaches that are too much like me," they were like, just like each other.
But he was able to stay calmer.
Yeah.
It's funny when you know you don't have to get mad, or it's not your position to get mad, how you automatically kind of don't. It's weird. It's a weird thing. It's like, it's like, oh no, that's. But if the situation was reversed, you're just furious as hell. Great show today.
Whenever you guys are ready, we'll go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Friday. It's kind of a little blustery, snowy day in Bloomington. Not sure how it is where you're going to be, but I hope it's a good one. Temperatures getting down a little bit on this day, but to warm it up, we've got Keegan Nickoson joining us from thehoosier.com. Get us caught up on what all's happening with Indiana football and the transfer portal, because they've been busy, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Bringing in a lot of defensive players for what I've seen. Kobe and Daryl Minor, a couple brothers, a linebacker and a DB. And then the Clemson wide receiver commitment is a really interesting one to me. I think the Emery Simmons loss is a big one. I think he was he held a big role in that offense. Just a reliable, fast guy. But it's still, the big hole is the quarterback position. And until that can be shored up, there's going to be very few people that are confident about Indiana going into next season. And as each day goes by and they don't have a solidified quarterback, it's not a fun game.
No, because you talk about adding receivers or adding this and that, and when you don't have the guy in place who's going to be making those plays, it would seem to me it would be kind of hard to lock some of those pieces into place, because they're going to kind of well, who's going to be throwing me the ball?
Yeah, definitely. And the two guys that Indiana is looking at the most, Chance Nolan and then a new name, Mike Wright from Vanderbilt, kind of two very different guys. Nolan's more of a thrower. He is mobile. I think he averaged about 10 to 15 yards last year for Oregon State. Only played in 5 games. Almost beat USC, lost 17-14, but had a good season, had a neck sprain that kept him out of a lot of games. And then you got Mike Wright, who this guy is fast. 8th top speed in the NCAA last season, ahead of Bijan Robinson from Texas. He is Dexter Williams if you want to replace Dexter Williams with Dexter Williams. He had 309 all-purpose yards against Hawaii in the first game last season, 163 of those on the ground. He is dangerous. Shut up, Kyler. I don't want to hear it.
I did not. I apologize. I did not notice the mustache.
I don't want people to notice it.
Kyler is pointing that out. Wow, maybe a little shoe polish helps with that.
Yeah.
In the early stages, there maybe, or what's that stuff for men? The color thing that they make, maybe darken it up a little bit. Yeah, or just grow the whole thing up. Just go for the mountain man beard.
I can't do that just yet.
For those of you that can't see, there's nothing on his face. He's got a mustache started. We'll start it. You can thank your friend Kyler for that one.
Yeah.
So the quarterback situation, though, while it is important, they can't wait. They still have to try to fill some of these other holes offensively, especially. You mentioned a lot on defense, but offensively, they've got some holes to fill, man, and it's all the way around. It's not just quarterback; it's line, it's receivers, running back. Everything is going to needs. Of a positive, the Football Writers Association yesterday named Jalen Lucas as an All-American. Congratulations to him on that. He is an absolute talent, no doubt.
Yeah, and I think getting him back is much bigger than a lot of people could even think. And I think a lot of people were surprised when he decided to come back. I mean, the opportunities he could have gotten at other programs, you look at it fundamentally, he could have gotten so much more money at another program. The draft prospects he could have gotten going somewhere else, being set up for the NFL. But that commitment, especially being from Louisiana, you got to feel like LSU is going to come after him. Tulane, I think the team that he was initially committed to. I don't know how you want me to be serious when you're making fun of me about my mustache. But, I'm really looking forward to watching him as that feature back in the backfield, because I think that's something that he missed out on. He should have gotten more opportunities, and you saw it at the end of the season, that big Michigan State game, and just how dangerous he is in the passing game too, and how you got to bring in a quarterback that can complement him well, because we saw what Dexter Williams did compared to what Bazelak did with him.
So what are the prospects? It looks like they're rebuilding decently after a season that was pretty bad. The prospects after that season did not look great, but they're able to pull in some talent, which is a little surprising. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, that's one thing I respect.
So we've got to give Tom Allen and his staff some props for it.
Yeah, I've commended them, just how aggressive they've been. They're not rolling over. They're bringing in a bunch of guys on visits, and they're getting some talent from a lot of really good Power 5 teams. But like you said before, the offensive line is a struggle. The defense was depleted with all the departures to the NFL and losing fifth-year guys, and they're starting to rebuild that back too. I think the tight end position is going to be really interesting. I'm not sure if Brady Foley's ready to take that next step. I know they've been talking to a JUCO guy out of Jones College, I think it is, Owen Olsen. He was early in the process, still has yet to make a commitment. I know he was just offered by Cal and North Texas. So I would say Indiana is definitely still in play there. But yeah, just very aggressive, and they're not turning over. They're not giving up, and they're just trying to do their best in a bad situation.
All right, man. Before I let you get out of here, tomorrow, Indiana taking on Wisconsin. You'll be there for that as well, covering it for the Hoosier.com. What are your expectations, and what are you looking at tomorrow?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me about basketball.
Oh boy,
I don't know what my expectations
Well, we can go back to your mustache.
No, I don't know what my expectations are, because I don't really have much. Wisconsin's gonna beat you down. That's that Greg Gard gritty. You need to ask him if he's going to sign with the Colts already, or if he's going to the Broncos, because I'm tired of hearing so much about Jim Harbaugh. I'm not sure about the expectations for Wisconsin. I think Greg Gard's going to beat you down. I think they're gritty, that Big Ten defense. I think it's an 80-71 win for the Badgers. I lost you there for a little bit. We were frozen.
Okay, you're back.
Yeah, but I was just saying, I think the gritty Greg Gard defense is going to get you. You know, they hover around 60 points where most coaches want to be. And I think Indiana lets up about 80 points to this team. They have 3 solid scorers if Tyler Wall does play. But, yeah, I think it's an 80-71 win for Wisconsin, and I think the panic button is smashed into pieces after Saturday.
Well, if that does occur, then it would probably – Indiana's in last place right now, tied with Minnesota after their win over Ohio State last night. Let's be honest, they got lucky. They got a call that helped them out with that. But regardless of the fact that you were within that reach of that, and yeah, hit the panic button because the fear is where or when's going to come from if that happens. So we're don't want to prognosticate too much. The game's got to be played tomorrow first, but it's this team is in trouble. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
There is trouble because forget about Big Ten Conference. Getting into the NCAA tournament is looking that's starting to look like a pipe dream right now. I know that there's a lot of games left. People keep saying that, but it doesn't matter if you're not playing well, if you're not winning, if you're not doing the things you need to do. That means there's just more misery out there.
Yeah.
You have to change.
Yeah, and I think what Mike Woodson has been saying about Race Thompson and Xavier Johnson being out, you know, that's his go-to line when asked about the team's struggles. I guess no one should have any expectations of them winning a conference game until you get those 2 guys back, or at least one of them. And that's definitely not a great sight to see. That's not a great thing to hear, especially when the depth was being touted this whole year with Malik Renew and Jalen Hood-Schifino, how they were supposed to fill those holes. But yeah, it's looking like we could have a very entertaining NIT with Indiana, Louisville, and Kentucky if Louisville can pick up the sticks
Louisville's
and
not
get
going
into
to
the
qualify
NIT.
for the NIT. Louisville will not even be close to qualifying for the NIT. You have to have a winning record.
They almost beat Virginia Tech last night.
Yeah, almost. That works out great in hand grenades and horseshoes. But, yeah, Indiana is. You can't put the cart before the horse, but NIT could be a reach for Indiana. I don't want to say that right now with all these games left, but I don't expect them to get. I think that they'll get Race Thompson back. Best scenario is early to mid-February. Best case scenario for Xavier, late February, I think.
Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, saw Grace Berger come back from a serious knee injury, which she had surgery on, and come right back and help her team. I mean, fluidly just weld right into what her team is doing.
Mm-hmm.
I have to wonder if that's going to be the case with Race and or X because things weren't that fluid when they were healthy to begin with. I mean, not because of them per se, just as a whole.
Yeah. And with how fast Xavier Johnson goes, you kind of have to wait until he gets all the way back with that foot because that's one wrong turn, one hard step on that floor, and then he's down again, and you're probably not going to get him back for the rest of the season.
Keegan, what's up next for you guys on thehoosier.com?
Keep on following around. We're going to have basketball coverage wall to wall the rest of the season, as interesting of a season as this is going to be. And just follow Kyler, Kevin, Mason, Alec, get on the forums, a lot of recruiting stuff. Football's hot right now, so subscribe to the Hoosier.
Absolutely, and give my man Keegan Nickoson a follow on Twitter as well. And give me one while you're at it, at Jim Coyle ISB. Keegan, appreciate you, brother.
Thank you for having me on, Jim. A lot of fun.
Absolutely, but Keegan Nickoson from the Hoosier.com joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. What a fun day it has been. Man, another great lineup of guests, starting with Alec Lasley. As we talked about recruiting, Indiana offering Tyler Perry, the 4-star guard, 6'2", plays for Indiana Elite. We'll keep up with that. You can go to thehoosier.com for more on that as well. Previewing Indiana and Wisconsin as they'll take on the Hoosiers tomorrow. You can find plenty of information and preview all you need to know for the game information at thehoosier.com. Zach Osterman from Indy Star, big thanks to him as we talked about the Big Ten commissioner and where the league's going to potentially look. And a big thanks to Michael Lewis as well from Ball State, giving us some time to talk about how his season's going. Fun to talk to him as always, man. And Keegan, big thanks to you as well. Big thanks to RC, the producer today on the line. John is on assignment. And look forward to seeing you guys again tomorrow. I guess we got to get another Toddcast going. That's right. We got to find out maybe Todd has a special guest this time. Make sure you tune in for that. We'll get all that information out. But, yep, another Toddcast coming at you, man. Look forward to that. And hopefully Todd doesn't break his TV. But I'll see you tomorrow, Keegan, and the rest of you as well. And until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Good stuff, guys. Hey, Keegan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keegan.
Yeah, I'm going to go and shave this so I don't get bullied anymore.
Oh, come on. Keep it going, man. You seem like you're stronger than that.
It makes me look like 2 years older, I feel like. And my girlfriend likes it. I don't know why, but my girlfriend likes it.
You know what?
So.
Yeah, that's all you need. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I need.
Look at RC trying to be Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
You know, funny story. We are distant cousins. We are distant cousins, not by blood though. But my uncle knocked up somebody before he went to Vietnam. And then when that kid, they reconnected like 30 years later and made local news, Pike County and everything. But the kid
Pike County, where? Indiana.
And the kid is Pike Central, area. But that kid is first cousins with Brad Pitt. He's not a kid; he's like in his 40s. But he has pictures and stuff growing up. So I like to tell people that,
long lost cousin.
Yeah, I see the resemblance.
Yeah. I'm related to Howdy Doody, I think.
That's cool. We should
All
write
right,
them.
I got to do some homework, guys. I'll see you later.
Appreciate
Thanks,
you,
Jim.
brother.
Thanks, RC.
Thank you, guys.
See you,
RC,
man.
thank you, buddy. I appreciate you.
No problem, man. Have a good day.
You as well.
See you soon.